The following words are from my new book, Origins and Future of the Earth, Messages from Elves, Felines, and the Inner Earth. Published by Eva Kenas in 2025. Chapter 5 from my Inner Dialogues with Gwyndivet, Elven woman from the subtle earth. This chapter discusses how the dense bodies were created, but also discusses the evil behind the current matrix. Chapter 5: Science and Magic of Subtle Space and Origin of Dense Bodies. How do elements manifest on the subtle earth? The elements here act in a more luminous way. Water is very alive, far more so than in the densified material form. Fire manifests for us as light and warmth, and it never burns. We are also much more aware of the fifth element, the one that connects everything. You call it prana or chi. We have sweetwater lakes, springs, and flowing rivers. Beneath some of the bodies of water live crystal formations and underwater flowers. These flowers are highly healing. They cure melancholy. But sometimes neither healing flowers nor the support of loved ones is enough. If a being succumbs to deep sadness, it may begin to wither and eventually fade away. The sickness I regard to as melancholy existed before, but at one point in time, dark scientists, or mages, artificially created epidemic of melancholy. This disease of the heart and soul slowly drained beings of their joy for existence, pulling them into a state of hopelessness. These melancholies were infectious, spreading to others much like viruses and bacteria in the dense world. Many of us chose to enter the dense space thinking it would save us, but in reality it trapped us in a nightmare. The dense world became the domain of the very same dark mages who had caused these epidemics. Why would they do this? It was revenge against those who had tried to stop their experiments. A scientist who learns to manipulate space, matter and time becomes a powerful alchemist and mage. This power can often lead to pride, and pride often leads to corruption. This pride was the true cause of the current matrix system. After the epidemics of melancholy, scientists mages in the subtle space invented something called the grounding technique in dense matter. At that time, we already knew about the dense parallel of our planet, and we frequently visited it before the creation of physically dense bodies. We respected it as a space of dense minerals and later plant beings. By condensing our energy into a denser form, we hoped to balance our emotional instability. This was meant to be a healing method, an antidote to the melancholy epidemic. Healing through grounding. Does that sound strange? To us it was intriguing. Since we all had mastery over the self-renewal abilities of our subtle bodies and knew neither pain nor aging, it initially seemed like a good idea. How strange yet interesting. So dense bodies were meant to be healing biosuits for subtle beings? How did it work exactly? The goal was to create physically dense bodies by introducing metal essences, especially iron-based structures, into the bloodstream. By altering the blood, dense physical forms were created. But the introduction of iron into the blood attracted predatory entities, vampiric beings, that feed on iron-rich fluids. Entering the dense earth may have healed some, but it also brought in the very beings that had caused the epidemics, the beings who had misused science and magic, and also those who thrived on suffering and blood essence. They followed us into dense matter. That was our greatest mistake. We knew about them. They were the reason high magic and science had been banned. The predators sought only victims, while the dark scientists and mages took pleasure in manipulating others. They reshaped dense reality according to their own twisted desires. Eventually, they were banished from both the subtle and dense earth, and this was why they created the current systems, or matrix, in dense matter, which was not suitable for human and animal beings. They locked themselves and others within it. By then, it was no longer about healing melancholy. The dark scientists and mages had begun working with ancient, non-material entities that exist only for revenge and thirst for blood. Some know them as demons, but I will not speak their names. Since we had banished the dark scientists and mages from the subtle earth, they decided to conquer the dense earth, using the project of physically dense bodies to do so, and then it became an addiction. Various forms were transferred into dense matter, including vampiric beings who feed on the essence of others. In the subtle space, they feed on subtle blood. In the dense world, they feed on physical blood. In the dense matter, these forms developed a dependence on iron and other metals found in the blood of dense bodies, which provided them with a grounding force. This knowledge has been preserved in fairy tales and legends. Such entities were eventually banned from both the dense and subtle realms, but this only deepened their interest in matter. Most ungrounded and therefore disincarnated outcasts from the subtle universe exist only in time capsules of the fourth-dimensional reality. There they were isolated along with all forms of evil. They can now enter the dense world only through material beings who allow them access. Through them they feed on the essence of emotions and, in the dense world, on the fluids that contain them, primarily blood. Also, most demons from the 4D time capsules can materialize only with the help of certain metals contained in blood. If they are unable to control someone externally in the dense matter, they attempt to enter and act through their bodies. However, they are no longer allowed to incarnate. Some have been around for millennia, those outcasts from the subtle universe. They have survived for thousands of years by feeding on blood. The primary driving force of evil is low vibrational emotions, particularly anger, envy, hatred, and desire for power, or the destruction of creation, but also addiction. The dependency on the essence of negative emotions and consequently on the blood that contains them is the greatest issue. Evil is a disease. Aha, so evil is a disease as well as a form of powerlessness? It has no real power unless we give it power. Is that so? Yes. To give oneself over to evil is a trap, and escaping from that trap is difficult. In modern terms, you refer to evil as a psychopathic disorder. Psychopaths are often dependent on something or someone, driven by a craving for control over others for their own gain, and their primary motivators are often anger, envy, or a desire for revenge. You once told me that some elves often incarnate into dense matter specifically to understand and heal evil. So can it actually be healed? We have seen proof of this throughout the ancient history of the subtle realm. Evil has been often healed. You ask how? You know how. It has been preserved in legends and fairy tales. Yes, it was always love that healed evil. Punishment only deepens the desire for revenge. The eye for an eye system has never worked. Evil must be healed with its opposite, love, so that it can be transmuted. However, it must be isolated to prevent it from spreading or causing harm. Typically, it is contained in specific 4D capsules, where a malevolent entity remains until it is healed. Has war ever occurred in the subtle realm? Many wars were waged due to dark scientists and mages who misused their abilities. Our history is complex, far more intricate than yours in the dense realm. I cannot share everything. It would amount to thousands of pages of text. Can you explain the connection between science, alchemy, and magic? Our science is still beyond your comprehension. To a person in the early Middle Ages, this technology would have seemed like magic or a miracle. Even in your present age, our science would be perceived as something unreal. For example, self-regeneration, intentional shape-shifting, or time travel are concepts you still struggle to grasp, though you may already sense that they will one day be possible. For us, alchemy is the conscious transformation of matter or time through will. Our science works in tune with expanded awareness, which remains accessible to us despite the narrower perception within time and space.